very often I have had the feeling this whole three-act structure that is being taught in film schools is kind of ridiculous. What is three acts in Aguirre? And that the leading character from a certain point at the end has to change and has to be a different man. No, not so. Not in Aguirre. Aguirre is bad and he's only worse at the end. So it doesn't function with me like that. Sometimes there may be something like 5 or 6 acts in a film that I have made. I think it's brainless. It's really brainless to structure yourself, and it very often is a signature of mediocre films that become very, very predictable. And I don't want to make that kind of films. How do I psych myself up into writing? What I do the day before, normally the day I start to write a screenplay, I read poetry, but really high caliber. Roman antiquity, Virgil, old Icelandic Edda poetry 1,000 years back, Tang poets from China, 8th, 9th century, and other things. And I read and read and read, and I get into this fury of language, and it's the highest caliber of language. And I know when I start to write, I'm not gonna step down below this, or at least I try never step down below this. The second thing is I play music to myself while I'm sitting there. I play, normally it's Beethoven. Beethoven symphonies, the ones that have this dynamic and power, and it pushes me along. And I play it loud. My wife gets crazy when she hears it the 6th time in an afternoon. I'm playing the same Beethoven symphony, but it carries me, it pushes me, it drags me along. So each one of you who writes has to find his or her own way how to write. For me, it's fast, urgent, high level, and always with a very, very clear idea and vision of a film that's gonna be at the end as a result. I can read from Cobra Verde just to give you an impression, and it's again, this is written in prose, not with dialogues. Only recently I have started to have dialogue inserted in the names of the speaking people. And it starts with an image of heat, the notion of heat. The light murderous, glaring, searing, the heavens birdless, the dogs lie dazed by the heat. And now comes a beautiful sentence. Demented from anger, metallic insects sting glowing stones. Who would write that in a screenplay? Yes, it is a form of literature, and you can imagine as somebody who reads this, yes, this is the climate that we have to create on the set. Yes, the cinematographer knows what we have to do. And it ends, I just read a little bit to give you a feeling for the kind of quality of writing and the literary aspect of it. Francisco Manuel staggers towards us. He seems to be confused, murmuring, "The slaves will sell their masters and grow wings." I want to find snow. During the film, he was frequently speaking about faraway mountains and that there was snow. I want to find snow. As he passes us, moving into the distance, we hear him whispering, "The snow, the snow." Francisco Manuel staggers into the light and the dust and the vultures, the glare and the nothingness. So, but it gives a very intense feeling of how I sense the film. And this kind of sense, sensing the film, has to translate to the cinematographer. It has to translate to the person who creates the music, has to translate to the actor. And And when you have that, when a screenplay creates that, if a film, an entire film becomes visible, then you've got a screenplay. And I don't care how many pages it is. I don't care whether it's 3 acts, 5 acts, or no act at all. It's just pushed through it. On the set, quite often there's rewriting dialogue. For example, Rescue Dawn. It's awful sometimes. It reads wonderfully. Escape of prisoner in Laos, American pilots, and Steve Zahn has to say to Christian Bale when he crawls under the floorboards and tries to crawl out, he says something very silly. I must confess now, be God with you, or something like this. And I see Steve Zahn turning purple and red, and he was just about bursting out in laughter. And I say, Steve, I know this is somehow, it reads all right, but when you say it, it sounds awful. And he says it and rolls in laughter. And I said to Steve and to Christian Bale, how would you say it? How would you say? And he just says, good luck, get out, good luck. And that's all there is. So of course I hear that sometimes a dialogue spoken sounds like paper, and you better rewrite it on the spot, and you better do not interrupt shooting longer than 30 seconds. You see, you can write 10 lines of dialogue in 30 seconds. You better deliver instantly. And that brings life and cohesion into a shoot, and cohesion into a story. There has to be an urgency in you, and then you can, that's the way you should write, and that's the way I actually film. I shoot a film like this, but the urgency makes me act very quickly. You leave everything that's not important, you leave it out, you just go for the very, very central things. Aguirre, The Wrath of God, is a good example. At a friend's house, I was poking in his books because he was lovesick and was on the phone with his girlfriend who was leaving him all the time. And I just went through some books, and I come across a book for adolescents, 13-year-old boys or so, about adventures and discoveries. And I read 15 lines about a man, Lope de Aguirre. And I walked out, I knew this was a film, but the very next day, my small, tiny soccer team left for Italy. And we were on the bus. Everybody was drunk. I mean, everybody. And they were chanting obscene songs, and we had barrels of beer on board in the bus. And I was typing at that time a typewriter on my knees, and chanting, vomiting on my typewriter, obscenities around me, and we-traveling. And I would write the screenplay, and I would write, even at that time I was goalkeeper, even during the halftime, 10, 15 minutes, I was furiously typing on. And this is a screenplay I finished in 2.5 days. However, and normally I do not write more than 5 days, like Stroszek, 3-4 days. Recently a screenplay for my last, not published yet, feature film, Salt and Fire, 5 days. Because there's an urgency, and I see an entire film in front of me. I wait until I write. Sometimes these little elements are coming together. Sometimes I write only single words, or I write what Churchill shouted across the aisle. Even if it ends up in the film or not, doesn't matter. I'm somebody who never corrects a single word. I write it down, and I try to be disciplined that I don't even need to erase a single word or restructure a sentence. And this gives an urgency and also a precision. There's a precision which you do not reach otherwise if you brood over a screenplay for many months.